And welcome back. Hopefully you should all be well refreshed and have a cup of coffee with you. Thank you to Esme for hosting the first session this morning, and for all the work that's gone into putting on today's event. Like Esme, I'm one of the key account managers here at the OA and responsible for working with our fantastic employers and partners to support them in attracting more of you to their roles. I'll be hosting the next few sessions, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from some great speakers. And we also have another fantastic panel after lunch. So without further ado, let's move on. For the next 60 minutes, we'll be hearing from 3 organisations from the technology sector that are keen to support you into the sector. It's a sector that offers some great opportunities in both technical and non-technical roles. So there is opportunity for everyone listening in today. First up, we're going to be joined by Ben Edwards. Ben is a Royal Navy veteran and former Metropolitan Police detective. He's been a mentor to veterans and service leavers over the last 5 years and has placed vets successfully into businesses. Ben has a regional corporate security background, and he now focuses on protective intelligence, managing a team of analysts responsible for identifying and mitigating threats and risks towards Facebook executives across EMEA. Ben's sub-role is as a global co-lead for Facebook Resource Group, Veterans at Facebook, responsible for shaping and developing internal mentorship programs for veterans hired into business. Ben, it's great to have you here this morning.
Thanks a lot, Chris. Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks so much for having me. So today I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, my career history, my current role, and what I do at Facebook. Additionally, I've got an announcement to make on a new tool that we're releasing. And finally, I'll close off with some takeaways on transitioning and mentoring. So I've got a bit of a script. There's a lot of content to get through, so hopefully it's of value. So my background, I joined the Royal Navy at 16 as a junior sailor, serving on HMS Campbelltown, HMS Norfolk, as a radar operator of just over 5 years service. Although my military career is relatively short-lived, I can honestly say, to me, it made me who I am today, especially due to my age and it being extremely influential. After leaving the military, I then joined the Met Police as a detective. I obtained 9 years service in the Met and then decided to enter the corporate sector, which wasn't a mistake. After I've got over 10 years corporate security and senior management. I consulted to the National Health Service, and I've worked for both Ralph Lauren and Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, covering European markets with a regional security background. During these roles, I've managed protective security operations for the Lauren family and Meg Whitman, as well as other company executive board members. This led me on nicely to my current role here at Facebook. So I've worked at Facebook now for just over 2.5 years as a protective intelligence senior manager, covering, as Chris says, Europe, Middle East and Africa, and I'm based in London. So I run a team of analysts that identifies threats and risks to executive, and we also support travel risk. We work closely with executive protection details on the ground at global events such as Davos and Cannes Lion. Over the last year, we really had to change the way we work to support our executives in a working home environment. So if I was to tell you that 80% of the world's physical harm is present and indicated online prior to this taking place. So in effect, that's 80% of harm that we could potentially detect and mitigate. So my team at Facebook, effectively, they're not trying to find a needle in a haystack. We're trying to find a needle amongst needles. What's an actual credible threat amongst the chatter, which isn't, as you know, probably know, always easy. So I've been mentoring veterans and service leaders at all ranks and levels for almost 5 years now. I've grown and improved as a mentor over the years. I'm no martyr or expert by any means, but I do have extensive experience in mentoring and offering support and guidance to a high volume of vets and service leavers, helping them reach success. It's something I'm passionate about doing and still actively committed to doing today, currently mentoring 4 vets at present. So the reason I do this is because I remember how it felt when leaving those gates, and the last time, and it can be a lonely period. It can be a lonely place in the period of transition. It's really good to have someone to lean on that understands both military and civilian environments and helps bridge the gap. It just makes things a lot easier. So I have another sub role at Facebook, which is global co-lead for our Veterans at Facebook resource group. Now, this resource group is an internal support group for veterans employed by Facebook. My role is to manage and shape internal mentorship programs for our vets here at Facebook. So mentorship is particularly important in the tech industry, especially for veterans, I've found, as there's a lack of structure and chain of command. It's designed this way for collaborative working. So effectively, you can go to anyone at any level and you can work with them. And there isn't those barriers that there would be in a different industry like finance or insurance. So it's a very different way of working. But this environment can often initially be confusing and become challenging for people transitioning from the military directly into this environment. And this is what makes our mentorship program so important for people to succeed. So today I've got an exclusive announcement. We Facebook veterans are pleased to announce that we have built over the last 12 months a UK military skills translator tool. Now, this tool was mirrored from the US, but we had to obviously procure data sets to create the tool, which are relative to the UK military and the verticals. So the tool itself is solely built for veterans and service leavers to translate your military skills into roles we currently have available as employer here at Facebook. The tool is on the Facebook careers site, but I'll be dropping the link into the chat bar after, and also some other good resources around transitioning and mentoring. We've still yet to add UKSF, and some of the other refinements are still to be made, but we feel the tool's in a good place to publicise. I'll be happy to answer any questions in the Q&A also after. So getting into some key takeaway nuggets on transitioning. Again, you know, this advice isn't gospel, and I don't want to come across as preaching. Like any advice you're given, always take the good and the bad. Advice and guidance in this particular space is often subjective and can be a minefield. I can only give you my perspectives from mentoring experience and being a corporate hiring manager myself. So firstly, know your worth. Always back yourself. You have to remember that civilian employers want you and your skills. You are not lucky to be there. They are lucky to hire you. This is the reason JP Morgan, Lloyds of London, Barclays, Goldman Sachs, Amazon, and a multitude of other organizations have annual veteran recruitment programs. This is purely because they see the net benefit of hiring veteran talent because it makes good business sense to do so. Be appreciative of your role, but don't be over appreciative. Understand the skills you hold. Some are not obvious. A good example of this is a captain in the army looking after a battalion. You know, they may not be aware that they hold good skills in training and development, human resources, and it's not always obvious. So you really have to dig deep and look into yourself to identify what skills you actually have, because it may be that you're missing a career path that you can then pursue. So when leaving the military, it's often a good opportunity to reinvent yourself and upskill and do something completely different. Don't take your core transferable skills as a career you must pursue. Do something you're passionate about and that you feel you would succeed in. And a good example of that is an intelligence analyst who works for DSF, for example, does cutting edge military intel work, you know, may use those transferable skills to then join as a security or travel risk analyst, and they'll be compiling travel risk assessments, which is sometimes an anticlimax, you know, and you become unfulfilled. So really look, you know, at what you want to do, and don't necessarily feel that the natural skills transition is the right career path in a civilian environment. Use your military network and use LinkedIn. Be inquisitive. You know, a soft approach and to discuss and explore prospective industries will enable you to create new contacts. And in turn, this will create employment opportunities. Lots of people are willing to speak to you. You just have to be bold, go out, engage, speak with them. This is also a whole lot easier as I'm talking to you now in the current Zoom working environment, but also that has downsides as it's less personable than having a coffee and meeting someone in person. Use contacts for referrals into companies. A lot of companies will have referral systems. We have one here, but try and build those relationships organically first before asking for that. Try not to enter into relationships requesting straight away. Passive, organic building of relationships is a far better way that you can then ask for something, advice or a referral. Go out, research industries and roles prior to doing courses. What I see a lot of the time in the military, people do a load of different courses and they don't still really know what they're going to do. It's CTP have said there's these courses available. You've then wasted resettlement money. I've had someone that I've mentored before that had done 3 different project management qualifications of methodology, when realistically, he'll only utilize 1. So really, resettlement money is precious, especially if you've got a length of service. Then use that to your advantage. Research the industry, look at prospective roles, then upskill, not the other way around, because it will really help. So rejection, unfortunately, rejection is part of the process, but you should never take this personally. Do not be disillusioned. Use rejection as a driving force to succeed. Apply for lots of roles. Keep the ball rolling, as it isn't over till the contract is signed. Try not to focus solely on one role, only to be disappointed if you're rejected. It's a good way to keep lots of irons in the fire and different opportunities and avenues of exploration, rather, than solely focusing on one role. Because what will happen is your vision of often being the perfect fit for the role on paper may not tie in with what the hiring management are looking for, and you can't guess this. So one person's waste is another person's food. Hiring candidates as a hiring manager is always subjective. You can engineer opportunities, but there is also an element of luck to job hunting, and also the market as well, and how many jobs in that industry are on the market. So jobs are often like buses. You won't see anything. You may be rejected lots. Then all of a sudden you'll receive 3 offers at once. Try not to focus on salary alone. Look at what the opportunity provides you for development and progression, as this could be worth money in itself. Try and look at the bigger picture and not be short-sighted. Check Glassdoor, read company reviews prior to applying to a company. Choose a good manager, someone will champion you. That's really important, because you could have a great company, a great role, and not someone that's invested in you. And when you come out the military, you really want that investment. You want to see that development and that progression. And so another thing that's really important is do not remain in a toxic working environment. As military people, we'll often try and make things work and try and turn around a situation and see negative environments as a challenge to overcome. If you're stuck in a role that challenges your values, morals, and ethics on a daily basis, and it isn't working out, then cut losses and plan your exit. This will serve you better in the long run. The reality is that you may get unlucky and find yourself in a company or have a manager that's not invested in you. So a good example of that is a recent Army captain I've just mentored. He joined a startup, was sold the dream, and it just wasn't the role that he was sold. So from then on, we had to plan that exit, find a different role, but it doesn't mean you have to leave straight away. Obviously, if you're being paid and financially you can't do it, but if it is so toxic that you need to leave, then you probably should look to leave, and you need to judge the situation. I'm just being realistic, because a lot of people go into roles, they don't realize that it may not be the best company, or it may not be a role that's suited to them, or it could be a toxic environment. So rather than sitting there and just accepting that environment and trying to make it work and try and make it better, as we do as military people, often it's better just to cut your losses. And you will not always be able to identify that when accepting a role. So it's really important you do your due diligence prior to accepting or applying. Again, and then that goes back to Glassdoor and researching and looking at the company and the reviews. Don't be driven by military rank. Be driven by skill set. So if you're a higher rank in the military, this naturally will come with a lot of additional skills, but you have to be skills driven to succeed commercially. So ideally and psychologically, leave your rank at the gate when you leave. This will stand you in good stead when you transition and enter into a corporate role. So imposter syndrome. So imposter syndrome is really important because everyone will feel it, or most people will. So there may be times where you're in a meeting or an event where you feel like you don't belong or shouldn't be there. And that is perfectly normal. We all feel this. And you may continue to feel that throughout your career as you progress and you're pushing those stretch goals, boundaries, promotions. So last but not least, be kind to yourself. This is often not something we think about being ex-military, because we're all institutionalized by our previous environments and experiences to an extent. So don't fight this or put immense pressure on yourself. Often military people, when leaving, turn on to what I refer to as the civilian switch, where they will attempt to become a civilian overnight in an automatic transition. This just isn't possible, as transitioning takes time. So having that awareness, patience, and being kind to yourself is really, really important. So thanks for listening. Also, thanks, Laura, for the invitation to speak today. I've been really thrilled to speak to you all. Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and reach out to chat more. I'll hand you back for some Q&A, I believe.
Yeah, Ben, thanks for that. A couple of questions that we've got. The first one that's come in is from an anonymous attendee, but just asking what your thoughts are about traditional will traditional London-based jobs become remote, and will the current way that we're all working continue?
Well, I can speak from from a Facebook standpoint that we were very, very quickly during the pandemic assumed to fully remote working roles. So we actually have a lot that are remote working, and that was done very early on. So I don't know what the long-term plans will be for most industries, but what I would envisage is once companies who don't have a mixed model or a remote working will lose talent, because also it enables companies to procure additional talent across the rest of the country and or the market itself, which opens the talent pool. So I think if companies don't move to those models in the future, if other companies continue to do that, then they'll very quickly lose talent and pivot towards that anyway.
Fab. And just a couple of more that we've got here. Do you require a technical background for roles at Facebook, or are there roles that are open to those without that technical background or that technical grounding?
Yeah, I mean, obviously a high percentage of the roles are technical and engineering driven, but all of the support roles, are non-technical. So there is plenty of roles at Facebook that are non-technical roles. It's just finding out what fits, and that leads into our skills translator, which you can put in your area of working, your rank, and it will translate those roles, which again, even if you don't get that role itself, it opens your eyes to what type of roles you could be applying for across the board.
Fantastic. And I guess that leads me on to my final question, really, which is what drove Facebook to develop this tool? What was the motivator for the organization to introduce it?
Well, that's a good question, Chris. So we developed on the website, you'll see a US tool, and that was originally developed by the company, and we wanted to mirror that in the UK because we understand that there is a lot of veteran talent that we want to explore as candidates, and this enables people to build confidence to apply for roles here. So we wanted to mirror that because it was working very well in the US, but obviously it came with its challenges because the data sets, the roles, and the UK military differ heavily from the US military, and also them being open around offering up that data. So it was challenging. I worked on the project team, but hopefully we'll see the net benefits of that, and we'll also build on it. It was developed by monster.com, who a sister company, military.com, by consultants. So they've got a lot of experience in the recruitment space. So we had some great consultants working on it, obviously built into our careers website.
Fantastic. And it's fantastic to see organisations like Facebook doing what they can to support our veterans into their roles. Ben, thank you so much for joining us this morning. As you said, if people want to get in contact with you, they can reach out to you on LinkedIn. So thanks very much for that. Next, we're joined by Jamie Pollard-Jones. Jamie is the Managing Director of Decode XP. Jamie is an ex-Army captain turned entrepreneur who served with the KRH. Jamie is now Managing Director of Decode XP, creators of the High Intensity Team Transformation Programme. Jamie, thank you for joining us today.
Not at all. Thanks very much for having me. Good morning, everyone. I'm here to talk about my kind of transitional journey from the armed forces into the startup environment. And the way I thought I'd frame that was to take you through 8 lessons and tips that I've identified in the context of starting a business, but critically retiring into it. Very happy to take questions throughout. I know there's a chat box going, and I'll address those at the end. But before we do dive into those lessons, I thought I'd give you some context and talk about our journey to where we are today. So military-wise, I commissioned into the KRH in 2015, spending time there as a troop leader. I worked out in Tallinn as SO3 current ops, and then I rounded off my 6 years as second in command at Purbright. And I guess both Decode XP and Challenger Escape stem from this simple idea that people grow and retain knowledge through experience rather than what they're taught. And certainly that translates into the basic training environment for both soldiers and officers. So I guess Challenger Escapes came first, and we wanted to learn about the escape room world. We wanted to learn how to build live experiences. So my brother Sam and I developed the UK's first portable escape room in an ISO container, and I think you can see that on the screen. And we've taken that container all around the UK. It was the UK's first festival escape room in a brand partnership with Krabby's, and it is now for sale. So if you know anyone in the market, do drop me a message. But we've also worked with a variety of global brands through our consultancy offering. We were asked by Dyson to create an experience that used their products in an escape room format. And it was initially an internal challenge to their engineers, but did eventually sort of go accidentally viral. And that video has been seen, I think, 500,000 times worldwide. And what that fed was working with Dyson to say, well, actually, what else can we achieve through live experience? And we've integrated that thinking now into a new induction package that's launching sort of post-pandemic, and we're implementing elements of the experience into their stores worldwide. And this kind of led, I guess, to the development of Decode XP, because if Dyson, which is one of the most innovative companies in the world, they still had an induction process that started with an apology. It was training that relied on PowerPoint. So that prompted us to ask, how can we create problem-solving experiences that have impact? And Decode XP in that regard simply exists to make corporate education better. It's a world where the diary invite for training doesn't give you a pang of dread. It's actually something that you look forward to. In our first package, as identified, is called high intensity team transformation. And that HIT package is designed to address the hybrid working problems of the post-COVID environment. So we use behavioral analysis. We use a live experience that's somewhere between an episode of The Apprentice and Spooks. And we use experiential workshopping, and that improves communication between team workers and team members in a way that tangibly affects change. And to do that, we use virtual reality to practice asymmetric communication styles, and we use video-based performance review, sort of inspired by CAT, in order to improve accountability. So that's where we are. That's where we are now. You're welcome for the plug, but it's been a really good journey so far, and I would recommend it to anyone. So if we go on to the slides, I guess for those who are setting up a business, there's a plethora of advice out there, but what I've tried to focus on are the military specific lessons that we've learned throughout. I'd recommend reading widely, and the book I'd start with would be The 48-Hour Startup by a guy called Fraser Doherty, and that's absolutely packed full of useful hints and tips. So firstly, I would say that leaving the forces has benefits. Our first container that you saw before was built with a startup loan facilitated by Ex-Forces, and they're a charity that exists to facilitate entrepreneurship within service leaders. Obviously, the Officers Association do indeed offer seminars and can help us with hiring, and we're looking to recruit training delivery staff in the future from the kind of ex-military cohort, and externally as well. We benefit from a partnership with WeWork. So where I'm speaking from now is their growth campus in London. It's an accelerator scheme that provides mentoring, office space, and relationships with big suppliers. The next one is build your network, and I think a few speakers before me have mentioned that, so I won't go over that ground. But as a specific example, after meeting General Paul Nansen just before his retirement, we connected on LinkedIn and got chatting about the programs that we were developing and how we did it. And he now acts as a brand ambassador for us and has helped influence the way that we design our programs. So, and I've also found that friends of friends in the military who you connect with on LinkedIn and platforms like that, they're more likely to engage, and that's clearly critical for the reach of your posts. And I'd recommend adding your own voice to the discussion and leveraging opportunities where they come up. Again, for example, I've tried to connect today with those who are speaking before and after me, and that means that you're building a network around that forces community. But I think also you shouldn't just link to that community alone, and industry relevant examples as well would be important. So in terms of more practical advice, I think 3 and 4 are linked. We don't do our own accounts. We have an external marketing agency, and we don't even build the puzzles that we use in our experiences, because we think that we need to find our differentiating factor. So where someone else can do it better than you, we find outsourcing particularly useful. And Fiverr is a really good way of doing that. So for those who aren't familiar, it's an international outsourcing website that allows you to create briefs that are then actioned by companies all over the world or individuals all over the world. So both of our logos were designed by someone in Botswana. We've had voiceovers for our live experiences that have been done by professional radio actors through that platform. We have social media posts that are designed on there. So again, I would really recommend checking that out, even if you've just got the genesis of an idea. If we go on to the next slide. So I'm always conscious of erring into the world of the business cliche, but the 3 that we kind of address here are ones that I've found to be true. And I guess the perfect solution to the problem that you may have identified almost certainly doesn't exist. And if I were to give an example, a very good friend of mine, I was chatting to you the other day, said, Jamie, we're starting a cocktail delivery business. And the premise behind the business is that you learn how to make cocktails by you know, doing it at home with video training. I said, sounds cool, great. And they were stuck on month 11's recipes. And that prompted something for me, because he wanted everything in place before he was even thinking about a launch. And imagine the journey that you need to get through to even get to month 11. So we kind of said, well, look, you know, get the basics of the idea in your head and then start moving, start executing, because by month 11, you'd have changed the business beyond what I think you'd even considered. The next one, fake it till you make it, has probably been our biggest one. You know, Dyson weren't paying two brothers staying in an Airbnb above someone's garage to run an immersive branded experience. They were paying Challenger Escapes and the way that we positioned ourselves. And that was through being, you know, super professional in the way that we communicated. It meant CCing in Sue from accounts, despite not having an accounts department. And it also means being very vocal about your successes and shamelessly so at times. And I think that's really important, because it's not something that we're necessarily as good at in the military environment. Point 7, beware the shiny penny. And this is one I'm always tarred with doing myself. And indeed, my non-executive director thought that I shouldn't put this in because it would make me super hypocritical. But the business world is rife with opportunities. You know, there are plenty of things that you can go and do. But I think sticking to your fundamental idea as an individual and then executing that is way better than the continually pivoting. And I guess the last and most relevant is enjoy it. In many ways, it's the antithesis of being in the military. There's no standardized wage, there's no dental plan, there's no guarantee of roof over your head. So it's really got to be something that you embrace. But on the other side, the opportunities and the adrenaline from being successful and from, you know, meeting the right people is absolutely fantastic. And I really would look at, I really would, you know, endorse doing that as a concept. So, you know, as discussed, the final slide just simply shows my details. Please do feel free to get in touch with any questions. I'm more than happy to jump on a call, and I do have a one-page summary of everything I've kind of rushed through today. So do just drop me an email or a LinkedIn request. Happy to take any questions that kind of come up.
Jamie, that's fantastic. Thank you ever so much. And we've got some time, so if you have got any questions for Jamie, please just type them into the Q&A box, and I'll ask them on your behalf. To kick us off, though, Jamie, I've got a question for you. And was running your own business something that you always wanted to do? Was it always an ambition of yours?
Yeah, I think so to an extent. I think it's something that's kind of ultimately accountable, and that was quite attractive to me. So, you know, the better you perform on a given day is seen in how you get results. So yeah, I think so. The actual inspiration for this line of work came from a trip to Budapest, where basically we identified that people were exhibiting their innate behaviors in an escape room context. So we wanted to work out how we could take that data and then translate it into performance review and results. So yeah, I think there's always been a bit of an ambition there, but it took the idea to really, you know, get moving on it. Absolutely.
And did you see, I guess the next part of that question really is just about the skills that you developed while you were in the military, and how those skills have supported you on your journey with running your own business.
Yeah, I think the leadership element is particularly important. It's, you know, having the ability to present and bring other people with you on the journey was really important. I think the way in which the Army does training also was a massive inspiration, because the way that you go and learn to build a basher and sleep out overnight is doing it. And at Sandhurst, I think you do it in week 4, and in basic training, you do it at the end of the second week. So that idea of, you know, everything being experiential and you learning by doing it is something that we, you know, I think translates really well into not just the startup world, but actually that could be done better in the civilian world.
And what would you say has been your biggest challenge? that you've had to overcome, and I guess how did you overcome it?
That's a really good question. I guess challenge number one is always money. That's the hardest thing to do is generate funding as a new business. It's a lot of pitching. It's a lot of speaking to different organizations that support you. But in terms of specifics, I think something that we've struggled with is I guess the PR element of running this sort of business is how do you tell people about your story? And it's something that I guess it took me too long to learn was to go out and seek advice. People, whilst they might not be always generous with their money as investors, will be very generous with their time. So a 30-minute discussion with someone in industry, you can generate over something as simple as a LinkedIn request and ask for some advice, and you can leverage the military link in that. So don't be afraid of asking for advice and then going away and actioning it.
And you mentioned that earlier on in your presentation that you reached out to your non-executive director. How did you go about identifying or appointing a NED, and how did you sort of build your network to find the right person, and where did you go to find them?
Yeah, so we've got a guy called Barnaby Winter, who's an ex head of an advertising agency in London, now runs his own consultancy. And it was a kind of trial and error phase. We used a bit of software called Bark, which is an outsourcing website. And we spoke to him about some of our business challenges, and we built a personal relationship before a professional one. And again, we literally went for dinner, and I told him about our business and the problems we were having. And he very kindly offered to kind of initially mentor us, and that built the relationship. And then it built to a point that we were comfortable with sort of inviting him to be a more formal part of the business. And he takes some of the kind of marketing strategy and runs that on his own. But we initially cast a wide net. We been working with General Nansen for a while now, and again that was something as simple as a 5-minute introduction whilst I was still at Purbright, and then a follow-up Zoom call. And now he's very kindly offered to help us and has helped us generate some of the concepts we used. So I guess building the personal relationships between you and people that you might want to bring into your overall business dynamic are particularly important.
And I guess, just bear with me 1 second, I've just seen we've just had a question. What made you decide that this was the idea to pursue? I'm sure that in while thinking about starting up your own business, there was a number of things that were going on in your head and some ideas that you had. So what was the one or what was it about this idea that gave you the confidence to go for it and to kick it off?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. I guess the idea that we are currently pursuing isn't the one that was the eureka moment, as it were. So it's that iterative development. So the prompt, I guess, was the business, as I kind of briefly alluded to, was standing in an escape room in Budapest and realizing that Jamie is, pretty gobby and talks over people at work, and he's also doing it in this escape room. A friend of mine, not necessarily, very detail oriented and was really good at the detail oriented puzzles, but can miss the bigger picture. Well, that's really interesting and valuable data about the way that people work. So we took that idea as a concept and we've, continually adapted that. So I don't think you get any points, as it were, for having the idea, because, like I say, you cross the road and have a great idea for a new form of traffic light, but it's the execution that makes it really important. So if you've got, and the confidence for going full time came from, as I said, starting out with Fiverr, we built a brand and we built a logo, and then we went to X-Forces and said, we've got this kind of loose idea and a kind of, we want to make a container. And they said, great, here's some cash, go and do it. And then that stemmed to Dyson, and then Dyson stemmed to, we're currently working with Aviation Gin on a brand partnership for a distillery in America, which is, if you'd have asked me 5 years ago if you thought that we'd be, working abroad or doing these kind of things, we wouldn't have even had that idea. So I think just starting is probably the way to go about it.
Fantastic. And finally, Jamie, hopefully there'll be people on who are listening in who are thinking about perhaps starting their own business, who perhaps hadn't considered it. What would be that one bit of advice that you'd give them? What would be the sort of what the one thing that you'd say to them, that to anyone that was thinking of starting their own business?
Start the process. I think, you know, the idea, the execution is the key. So if you have an idea and you start by, you know, speaking around a few friends at the pub and they say that's a crap idea, probably don't start it. But if they say, oh, that sounds cool, take it to the next stage and say, oh, we've got an idea of a business name. Okay, cool, that might look good on a logo. Pay, you know, my mate from Botswana, genuinely really good logo designer, £50 and get the logo done, and take that to an investor, or take that to a, you know, someone who's in the domain that you want to move into, and then that starts a process, and you generate momentum and keep going until you hit a fundamental stumbling block, and touch wood. We've not found ours yet, and hopefully won't for some time.
Jamie, that's fantastic, and your story is fascinating, and one that hopefully will inspire people to start thinking about starting their own business. You can see how to reach out to Jamie. We've got his email address and his LinkedIn profile there. Jamie, thank you ever so much for joining us today. It's been absolutely fascinating. Hopefully we'll speak to you again soon.
It was a real pleasure. Thanks very much for having me.
So finally, for this session, entry routes into tech, cyber, risk can often be daunting and off-putting for those that are looking for roles in it. There's a number of organisations out there that offer qualifications, which are often confusing, expensive. So how do we navigate ourselves around that? TechVets are a free network that offer access to training and a network of support from veterans that are looking, and for veterans that are looking to access the sector. We're delighted that James Murray, TechVets CEO, is joining us today. James joined the military in 2000, where he served for 19 years deploying in Northern Ireland, Kenya, and finally in Helmand Province with the infantry. After sustaining an injury while in Afghanistan, James served the rest of his time in intelligence, developing the material, personal exploitation capability, and providing integral support to UK defence engagement in East Asia. Upon leaving the military, James was responsible for the strategic direction of threat intelligence at the Government Digital Services, and then James was also committed to supporting TechVets, supporting the operational TechVets activities, volunteering his time as a co-lead for London chapter. And in January 2000, James was appointed the TechVets CEO. James, thanks for joining us this morning.
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me. Can you hear me all right? Is the sound okay?
Loud and clear. Brilliant.
Look, thanks for the intro. It was great. Let's go for questions. We'll finish there. Look, thanks ever so much. I think it's a really important topic, and ideally what I want to do is to set the scene by providing some context. You know, what are the problems that the industry are facing, and therefore what are the opportunities that are being presented to veterans and service leavers, and clearly, you know, how do we highlight ourselves as being really credible candidates for some really awesome roles across every single industry, every sector, but where tech and cybersecurity is involved. Slide, please. So first and foremost, I thought it'd be really good to set some context, and especially relevant because Alex, down in the bottom right there, served for 12 years in the British Army in the Inc Corps as an officer. His decision to leave was difficult. He'd hoped to progressively sort of move into more technical roles, but that wasn't really available in the Inc Corps, so he left. And actually, when he did, he was quite confident that he would land a role in IT. Actually, as it transpired, he found that the job specifications were demanding really stringent experience and certification requirements that he couldn't fulfill. And his applications were therefore being rejected at the HR filter. And due to that, he then left the military without a job. He suffered from poor mental and physical health. And like many people leaving the military, in essence, with a spring in their step, who hadn't necessarily got a pathway lined up, hadn't prepped and planned as well as they should, ended up falling in bad times. He ended up, like most do in that sort of situation, underemployed, taking manual labor to pay the bills. But luckily during that period, Alex met someone else who was also a TechVets member who'd found employment through us. And it was through the community primarily, but also access to things like the Digital Cyber Academy that helped position Alex in front of the right people and with the right skills. And then when interviewed by me, Alex said, and I quote, "The TechVets community was the positive way of engaging with people across cyber industry and the military community that's already out there to share information that can otherwise seem impenetrable. The online community gave me the platform to directly explain my unique skills and experience, quote end. So as we can see there, TechVets enabled him and was in essence responsible for connecting him with the right person, who then hired him as a cybersecurity manager at a Big Four consulting firm. Slide, please. So what is this, these problems that we're facing? And clearly veterans face a number of problems when they leave. It's a really challenging time when you quit your job and then have to find another job. My second job taking on TechVets was really easy. I landed the role and then I quit my other job totally risk-free. But before we even cover the issues that veterans face, there is a real issue in tech and cyber at the moment with the skills gap. And it's banded around quite often as almost quite black and white, that it's a really simple thing to solve, but it's really not. There are a lot of programs already running to try to help develop these sort of skills, but they're going to take 5-10 years at least for us to see the results. In the meantime, there is a real drive for diversity and diversity of thought. And by that, we mean bringing people in with different backgrounds, different experiences who can help solve the ever complex problems across, especially cybersecurity, but also wider technology. Now, I think one thing here that's worth pointing out is that there are huge skills gap and people are still looking for the same talent that they've already looked for. And we refer to it as unicorn chasing because these people don't exist. They're already in jobs. With the current economic climate, people aren't moving jobs either. They're sticking where they are, generally speaking, because it's a bit more safe and secure. So there is a real issue, and I'm seeing people come to me on my inbox daily at the moment with opportunities because they're keen to attract veterans in. And why? Because it's a huge growth area. If we look at cybersecurity, globally, the market is expected to reach £210 billion by 2027. And again, if you look at the increased use of digital and technology across all of society and all aspects of business, it's obviously starting to really invigorate the growth in that market even further. Specialized tech roles at the moment are particularly in demand. Things like network security, where salaries increased 69% on average over the last year to £85,894. That is a staggering 69% increase, especially given the state of the economy and the hiring issues. Within wider tech, we're looking at digital transformation, which has emerged as the most prominent strategies being executed by public and private organizations over the past years. But again, over the last year, we've seen that many companies have accelerated their programs by more than 5 years in that 1 year period. And that is incredible. And that creates huge numbers of gaps in security and assurance and compliance. And at the same time, plenty of opportunities. Again, the higher salaries tend to be in tech, although managing expectations, when those adverts go out with a starting salary average of 70K, that is also including all the executive roles and is a bit misleading. But the average tech salary in the UK is £53,318, which is up 4% on 2019 figures. And again, that's despite the low inflation and difficult economic backdrop. In contrast, we're looking at non-tech jobs standing at roughly between £30,000 and £37,000. And again, these jobs aren't just in the cyber industry or the tech sector. These are in every business, in every industry, in all sectors. Every job is now digital and most are increasingly technical. So it's not about going into the tech sector necessarily. There's also something really credible about taking on roles in the industries that you really enjoy, but with that sort of passion for tech as well. Slide, please. So we're looking at, as you are sat there now, roughly around 14,000 service leavers every year from all ranks. And for many, we don't often consider these sort of numbers, but only 4% at the moment of working age veterans are employed in information and communications. Arguably, that's taken from 4 years ago, and that would have slightly increased, but the principle remains. And the biggest chunk of people leaving are going into the same sort of roles. And again, plenty of them are going into roles where automation and robotics are really starting to have an impact. Again, on top of that, we had the impact of COVID-19 when the furlough scheme ends. Clearly there's many people that are going to be laid off. Veterans aren't immune from that, and service leavers going into that environment are going to end up looking at competing with far more people for each role that they apply for. So that's something that's worth considering. That doesn't mean that that's necessarily a blocker. It just means that you have to work a bit harder to make sure that you are adding even more value to that CV. And when you get to interview, making sure that you stand out. But what you will find is that you have everything you already need. And I can't emphasize this enough, actually. When I left the military, I was actually quite sick and tired of it. There were a lot of ceilings. And the one benefit you have as soon as you leave is that you are the master of your own destiny. There are no restrictions other than what you place on yourself. And that is really, really awesome. It gives you loads of freedom. You can follow whatever you're passionate about. But it also means that when you're getting ready to leave, you've got to understand what skills, what experience, what value you bring. And that's really important. Next slide, please. So bit of a tongue-in-cheek slide, and just showing a really simple sort of diagram of a fob. But the point is a really important one. There will be people among the audience here who have managed in the infantry. They've managed a quick reaction force. Maybe a team that's responding to incidents around the outside of a patrol pace, for example. And that's a carbon copy of someone who manages an incident response team in cyber. And some of these people are commanding fantastic salaries, really punchy jobs, working for awesome companies. And all they're doing is exactly what you've done in your military career at certain times. But at the same time, you're just automating it, and there's a little bit of a different context behind where the threat's coming from and how it's manifesting. But the skills are exactly what people talk about. And when they talk about the soft skills, these are incredibly important. On the surface, it seems that all the opportunities in tech and cyber are really technical. And yes, for many of the jobs, you do need some technical skills. Some you need really technical skills. And again, the amount of roles that require that base level of tech skills is increasing. But at the same time, the biggest gap at the moment is in people with the soft skills, the people that are able to, showcase experience with leadership and teamwork, social perceptiveness. Very important. I've worked with some, phenomenally talented technical people. They spent their entire lives building relationships with code on a screen. So things like flexibility and adaptability, so you don't burst into flames when there's mid-quarter changes, or you come into work because you're not that fussed about having a difficult night's sleep. Those things are actually they exist outside, and you'll very quickly realize that you've got a lot of skills that have been really ingrained within you. If you look at Google, for example, they concluded from a whole exercise of looking at skills that STEM expertise was actually less important than softer skills for their top employees. And they identified the characteristics that distinguished good teams from dysfunctional ones. And it's no surprise that their top managers displayed the same skills that we all have as veterans. Again, we've all just served, or most of us anyway, have just served during one of the most complex and operationally challenging chapters of British military history, and honed all of those skills as the core competencies that the MOD focus on developing. So you're in a really good position. Now it's just about selling yourself. Slide, please. So this is where TechVets comes in. You've got people like Alex, people like yourselves ready to leave, and you're looking for that next opportunity. CTP is pretty good. It offers a lot of great stuff, but it's still based on a relatively traditional model, and tech doesn't really work like that. A 5-day course is not going to help. Building your network in 3 months doesn't really help. And additionally, understanding industry, it takes a little bit more than just dipping your hand in the pot. So TechVets is here to help solve as many of those problems as possible. We're a non-profit. We were established in March 2018. We're now officially a program within RFEA, the Forces Employment Charity, which I'm taking us into that sort of merger as we speak. We basically provide opportunities for veterans, service leavers, full-time and reservist persons to join our amazing community, to learn and train using the leading resources that we have, and to receive valuable employment support. And the important thing is we do this to build on the strengths of veterans and to support the UK's digital economy. And that's a very powerful line. There are plenty of organisations out there that look at veterans because they're vulnerable. I have people in my community, no doubt, who meet that criteria. I don't know who they are. That's not for me to look at. What I'm focused on is how I can showcase to business how they're missing out on this awesome talent, and how I can then help the UK's digital economy to really improve, especially post-Brexit, by providing awesome talent that companies can really tap into. And that's the key thing, because as a byproduct, veterans are so much better off because of it. Slide, please. So I won't go into all the detail on this. It was covered at the start. But one point I'll make is there were two sort of core sort of areas within my career where when I left, I really focused on. The first was my time in the infantry, where actually there was a real strong building of soft skills and things like the teamwork and leadership and understanding how to deal with difficult situations. Then my second part of my career was all about actually how do I become business ready? How do I become someone who is attractive as a candidate? Making sure I had all the right understanding of industry, and I built my network really, really well, really quickly. I was on LinkedIn and hammering sort of LinkedIn messages and stuff like that. I had a 5-year plan. Was it enough? It's never enough. But it's all about how you plan. And my plan was split down quite nicely. So I knew exactly what I wanted to do at certain gateways, and that really helped. And I set myself a target of networking, where each time I met someone, I would walk away with a minimum of 2 other names, and I would have my CV out to people constantly as it evolved, and that worked. However, when I left with all that planning, I was still very much a generalist, and I struggled to understand where I would fit specifically. And add to that the issue, I had no industry experience, which we all struggle with. So that's where TechVets came in. I joined as a member, focused my networking into the cyber industry, picked up my job with GDS, used the Veteran Digital Cyber Academy to upskill a bit, and then that was a great stepping stone for me. I volunteered with TechVets for a year and then picked up this role last year, and it's been amazing ever since. Slide, please. One thing I love about TechVets, and one thing I'm really proud of, is the partnerships that we've built. And this enables us to work and really dive deeper into the veteran community as well as the tech sector as well. Great partnerships with the Vets Service Initiative, which we've I did some work even yesterday afternoon, getting a guy who was struggling to understand where he would fit, to give him that sort of specific support. We're also associate partner of SASIG, the Security Awareness Special Interest Group, community partner of Scotland Connect, and a big one there is community partner of CREST, the largest global accreditation body for cybersecurity. Slide, please. And that's pretty much the background of TechVets. What I'll do now is quickly hammer through the sort of services we provide. There's emphasis on the community. It underpins everything. It's the most important thing and the most useful for all of you here. Slide, please. And again. Huge community, 5,000-ish people, all linked to the military. They've served at least one day. And we have regional links all across the UK as well, with through our 12 active local chapters. The ones in green are where we have volunteer chapter leads. And our community is awesome because the veteran community makes the difference. Whilst, yes, there's a lot that are transferring from sort of non-tech, non-cyber into tech and cyber, we've got a lot of veterans who are really experienced in industry. And they provide all the information, guidance, support, answering questions, etc. in the community. It's all free of charge. There's no sales pitches. Everything is 100% free for everyone. There's no hooks. There's no paying back 2 years down the line. And you can access all of this stuff forever once you join. We have the most junior analysts who have just gone out and can tell you about their story. We've got people who are starting their own businesses. We've got people who are 20, 30 years in industry, and all of which will, there's someone who can cater for everyone's needs. We're taking on 160 new members on month, with most coming from the Army, primarily due to the fact there's less technical trades. Slide, please. This is where it all happens in our Discord server. It's a pretty active community. It's really cool. Loads of channels for people to discuss everything to do with a career in cyber and tech. We found, again, the bit that adds the most value to members is their ability to question an experienced group of veterans who are already there, who know what they're talking about. Again, there's no sales pitches, no snake oil, no vendors, no recruitment agencies. You can literally just mitigate all of those companies looking to exploit the vulnerable period when you leave the military, and especially get past all those issues with the extortionately priced and often inadequate training that misrepresents the truth about salaries. Slide, please. The idea of the community, slide again, please, is you come in, you can ask your questions, you can really get a feel for it, but you've got a ready-made network there that's got really deep links into tech and cyber across all sectors. Then where you need your training, we've got all sorts of stuff from the sort of baseline. If you want to go in a management role, then clearly you're going to want a bit of upskilling so you understand some basics about the tech that your teams are going to be working with. We've got the security and the infrastructure fundamentals. Again, that's all free. Slide, please. We've also built some incredible partnerships with industry names, some really big industry names as well. So we've got the Veteran Digital Cyber Academy with Immersive Labs, which is hands-on gamified cyber training, everything from sort of tools, techniques, CTI stuff, through to GDPR risk type training as well. We've got the Fortinet Network Security Program through Fortinet. Splunk partnership gives us access to Splunk Work Plus, Fundamentals 1 and 2 training. And, you know, clearly they are, I mean, that is a skills gap that is absolutely huge. And a Splunk consultant who's going out client facing can pick up once they're sort of 5 years in, sort of £1,200–1,500 a day. And there's huge gaps in those skills as well. They've got 15,000 customers in over 110 countries, with 89 of the Fortune 100 as well. So again, a great opportunity there. We've got Cisco Academy, which has Linux training and 75 hours of Python training. We've also got the Pega Academy, which will be opening up soon. Loads of other stuff there as well. The other thing that we do, which is great, which I love about the community, is it's anonymous. You can put whatever username that you wish, and no one knows who you are. And I thought that would be great for the youngsters who didn't want to, you know, who wanted to, you know, not be coming across like they were, you know, in the wrong in front of officers. Actually, it was the other way around. It was officers who were coming in who could actually strip away all the rank and really just be themselves, merge in with the community, really get involved in stuff and really enjoy their time with the rest of the people in there, and actually free of all the connotations sometimes that being in a position of authority in the military can provide. Clearly, I don't mean you go in and you know, bad behavior or anything. It's actually a really quite mature community. But it just means that you can really get involved and there's no assumptions, which is really nice. There's no judgment. It takes that edge off it and it makes the community so much stronger. And we've got a Hack the Box team, which was, again, hands-on training. They were 52nd in the world last year to show some of the talent that we have. And the CTF team, Capture the Flag team, is 19th in the UK. We get all sorts of people getting involved in those. Good teamwork, fun, you know, good bit of learning, and you know, great challenge as well. Next slide, please. That just shows that, you know, clearly there's all sorts of stuff, and, you know, with the increasing brand and the trustworthy brand that we have, we're working with companies across the whole industry who are supporting us on a weekly basis. Slide, please. So you come in, you've managed to build your network. You know, it's a ready-made network anyway, so the job's been done for you almost. You're starting to find your feet. You understand what sort of role you want to take. You started doing a little bit of upskilling to make sure that you're sort of at least tech savvy, depending on what you want to do, and then clearly you need to land a job. Slide, please. We have CV review service, and what we do with that is we're able to pair you with, in the best case, someone specifically working specializing in the field that you're going into. For example, if you want to become a penetration tester, for example, then you're able to have your CV reviewed by an offensive security specialist. But actually, everyone who reviews the CV is in security or tech. So you've got a really fairly specific person there anyway, and they're all hiring managers or experienced looking at CVs as well. We've also got the Crest CV service, and if you put your sort of finished CV in there, that will be distributed to the 150 plus Crest member companies across the UK. You don't have to be Crest certified, and they're looking for everyone. And one of the biggest skill sets that's missing in tech and cyber at the moment is operational experience. Forget overseas. We like to think there's a lot of strategic in the military. Actually, in commercial terms, you're probably looking at head of service or chief of defense staff. Everything else is heavily entrenched in the operations, and that's really good. That's not a bad thing. That's awesome. That means that we're really used to working with multidisciplinary teams with tight deadlines, with tight resources, you know, with ever-changing situations, which is perfect for tech. And the leadership aspect of that as well, even more of a gap. Really struggled in my first job dealing with a boss who didn't have any experience. He was a programmer, so lent on me like a crutch, and I had to, almost like a hand puppet, help him out all the time with how to deal with people and manage teams. So there's huge gaps there. Again, these Crest companies are really looking for that. We do engage with industry quite a lot. We're running some fireside chats at the moment to link people in directly to get a real feel for behind the job descriptions, just talk directly to the hiring managers and also veterans who have been in your shoes. And then I suppose that the jobs, we've got a really, it's almost a frantic jobs board. There's jobs going up there every day. There's some amazing opportunities out there, all levels, all sorts of companies. And to put it in perspective, it was a slow start. We had 3 people into jobs in January. We've had another 28 since then. So we're looking at nearly 8 people a month into jobs, which is fairly good going. The average salary for jobs so far from the start of February last year till last month was just over £53,000. So again, we're talking all ranks as well there. So that's a really decent salary to have, and that matches the average tech salary, which is great. It goes to show that veterans, they're not irrelevant, and we absolutely have the skills that are needed. Slide, please. Cool, that's it. So in essence, you can sign up, you can go to the website, techvets.co. If you need any more of the details, then feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn. That's your first challenge getting into cyber and tech. You've got to be able to use Google well. And that's pretty much how everyone does their job. But yeah, feel free to reach out to me directly. I'm pretty busy, but I'll try and get through messages as quick as possible. You can sign up. It's everything you'll get is 100% free, like I said, and there's no expectation. You can jump in, watch from the shadows. If you don't like it, you can leave, and it's as simple as that. But it may make you understand your options. And again, I think the one thing that I haven't mentioned, which is really important for this audience specifically, is running operations in tech startups. It's making a killing out there. Tech startup community is vibrant, it's fantastic. There's some awesome teams out there, wider than cyber, some really great solutions being built. And you're the sort of audience which would be perfect for some of those roles. Getting really hands-on, wearing many hats in a startup is pretty fantastic. Really being part of that smaller team and having an impact, which I think would really appeal to many of you. That's it.
James, thank you ever so much for speaking. I think it's been a fantastic presentation, and hopefully has debunked some of the myths out there around routes into tech and into cyber. Obviously, reach out to James if you've got any questions, and I'm sure, as James said, he'll get back to you as soon as he possibly can. I want to thank Ben, Jamie, and James for joining us this afternoon. As they've all said, please feel free to reach out to them on LinkedIn, and they will be more than happy to get in contact with you and offer any support that they possibly can.